This is a statement by Donald J. Trump, 45th President of the United States of America. This is political persecution and election interference at the highest level in history. From the time I came down the golden escalator at Trump Tower, and even before I was sworn in as your President of the United States, the radical left Democrats, the enemy of the hard-working men and women of this country, have been engaged in a witch hunt to destroy the Make America Great Again movement. You remember it just like I do. Russia, 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 the Mueller hoax, Ukraine, Ukraine, Ukraine. Impeachment hoax 1, impeachment hoax 2, the illegal and unconstitutional Mar-a-Lago raid, and now this. The Democrats have lied, cheated, and stolen in their obsession with trying to get Trump, but now they've done the unthinkable, indicting a completely innocent person in an act of blatant election interference. Never before in our nation's history has this been done. The Democrats have cheated countless times over the decades, including spying on my campaign, but weaponizing our justice system to punish a political opponent who just so happens to be a president of the United States and by far the leading Republican candidate for president has never happened before, ever. Manhattan DA Alvin Bragg, who was handpicked and funded by George Soros, is a disgrace. Going on, saying rather than stopping the unprecedented crime wave taking over New York City, he's doing Joe Biden's dirty work, ignoring the murders and burglaries and assaults he should be focused on. This is how Bragg spends his time. I believe this witch hunt will backfire massively on Joe Biden. The American people realize exactly what the radical left Democrats are doing here. Everyone can see it. So our movement and our party, united and strong, will first defeat Alvin Bragg, and then we will defeat Joe Biden, and we are going to throw every last one of these crooked Democrats out of office so we can make America great again.
That was Trump's statement in response to the historic announcement that he's been criminally indicted in New York. Trump also took to Truth Social, writing, "These thugs and radical left monsters have just indicated the 45th President of the United States of America and the leading Republican candidate by far for the 2024 nomination for president. This is an attack on our country, the likes of which has never been seen before. It is likewise a continuing attack on our once free and fair elections. The USA is now a third world nation, a nation in serious decline. So sad." Yep, that's right. Trump's been indicated. The first indication of a former president. Almost as historic as the fact that we had a president who may have the literary competency of an 11-year-old. Now, the Manhattan DA, for his part, also released a statement, although he managed to spell all of the words correctly, writing, "This evening we contacted Mr. Trump's attorney to coordinate his surrender to the Manhattan DA's office for arraignment on a Supreme Court indictment, which remains under seal. Guidance will be provided when the arraignment date is selected." That arraignment will be the first instance where Trump is required to show up in person, where he'll be read the charges. From there, we can expect a series of pretrial hearings, and eventually a trial date will be set. We're also unlikely to see a perp walk, although it is likely that we'll see a mugshot. In fact, an ABC News producer spoke with Trump and asked him point blank if he'd turn himself in.
David, I just hung up with the former president. He tells me that he just learned of the news, said it's an attack on our country, said it's political persecution. He went on to say, David, they are trying to impact an election. I asked the former president, does he plan to turn himself in? David, he said, "You take care, John," and then he hung up on me. So I think we're going to have to wait and see. But obviously, all of our reporting has been that the former president does indeed intend to head to New York. Maybe didn't want to give me that piece of information just yet from him, but something that we know his team has been in active conversations right now with the Secret Service of what that is going to look like.
All right.
Although I would add here that I don't think there's a planet on which Trump refuses to turn himself in. I can't imagine being on the run would be especially easy if you are also one of the most famous people on the planet. Now, of course, where Trump cries grievance, you can find the usual parade of acolytes and hangers-on. Here's Don Jr.'s response.
I was proven even more right than I would have ever imagined, because apparently, Soros-backed Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg is actually indicting my father. So let's be clear, folks. This is like communist level shit. This is stuff that would make Mao, Stalin, Pol Pot, it would make them blush. It's so flagrant. It's so crazed. When even like the radical leftists of the Washington Post are out there saying, it's not really based on facts. It's not really based on the law. It's not really based in reality, but it's 100% based on politics. When your enemies are saying that, that's got to tell you everything you need to know right now about where we are as a country.
That was a clip from his show Triggered, which I gotta say, does seem pretty appropriate here. Also, not for nothing, but imagine if your father was indicted and instead of, oh, I don't know, going to be with your dad, your first thought is, gotta go make content about my dad's prosecution. If you thought your family was screwed up, trust me, it's not. Jim Jordan tweeted outrageous, which is probably how I would classify a wrestling coach ignoring the sexual abuse of his student athletes, but that's just me. Marjorie Taylor Greene tweeted, our side chants lock her up and their side is going to get a mugshot based on a witch hunt. It's time to change that, gloves are off, which is actually a pretty adept summation of the poetic justice here. And finally, Kevin McCarthy tweeted, Alvin Bragg has irreparably damaged our country in an attempt to interfere in our presidential election. As he routinely frees violent criminals to terrorize the public, he weaponized our sacred system of justice against President Donald Trump. The American people will not tolerate this injustice, and the House of Representatives will hold Alvin Bragg and his unprecedented abuse of power to account. And I think this is important to dig into for a moment, because what none of these Republicans seem capable of or willing to acknowledge is that Donald Trump brought this upon himself. No one forced the guy to violate campaign finance laws. And yes, other politicians have been indicted for campaign finance violations. But if the right was so concerned about Trump getting locked up, maybe don't nominate a guy who quite literally cannot stop committing crimes. And it's not just in this case. He's also awaiting indictment in Fulton County, Georgia, for trying to get Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger to find 11,780 votes that didn't exist for the express purpose of anointing himself the winner of an election that he lost. He's awaiting indictment in the DOJ special counsel probe into his theft and unlawful retention of classified documents at Mar-a-Lago. He's awaiting indictment in the DOJ's other special counsel probe into inciting an insurrection on January 6th. He's awaiting indictment into the New York Attorney General's probe into the Trump Organization. At some point, it should become apparent that when you commit crimes, you're probably going to get held accountable. Or, put more succinctly, you fuck around, you're gonna find out. And I gotta say, there certainly is some irony in all of these Republicans losing their minds over Trump being held accountable for his own actions by having fainting spells over the very notion that you can prosecute a political figure. This party's motto is lock her up. We sat around and listened to every Trump supporter, every media figure, every Republican politician for years parrot lock her up ad nauseum because they were so desperate to see Hillary Clinton thrown in jail. And yet now, they are having a collective meltdown at the prospect of Trump being prosecuted. Not for nothing, but I figured the lock her up party would be just a little more excited about a politician finally being held accountable. And lastly, I'll just end with this, if only for some comedic relief here. Just yesterday, Trump had taken to Truth Social, writing, I have gained such respect for this grand jury and perhaps even the grand jury system as a whole. The evidence is so overwhelming in my favor and so ridiculously bad for the highly partisan and hateful district attorney that the grand jury is saying, hold on, we are not a rubber stamp, which most grand juries are branded as being. We are not going to vote against a preponderance of evidence or against large numbers of legal scholars, all saying there is no case here. Drop this sick witch hunt now. You could leave milk in the sun and it still would have aged better than that post. I don't know if he was trying to butter up the jury or just trying to manifest some exoneration into existence, but either way, not only did it not work, but to see an indictment handed down the very next day is just peak comedic timing. So still plenty more to come in this case, but find some solace in the fact that after a long wait, it seems that there's finally some redemption for our justice system and some accountability on the horizon for Donald Trump. Before you go, a quick announcement. I've started a Spanish YouTube channel. Democrats desperately need to be able to appeal to Spanish-speaking audiences, so this is me doing my part. To help that channel get going in the algorithm so that we can finally start spreading our progressive message and breaking the conservative stranglehold on Spanish-speaking media, please subscribe and watch a few videos. The link to that channel, called Brian Tyler Cohen Espanol, is right here on this screen. And of course, to see more of my content in English, make sure to subscribe to this channel as well. The link is also right here on this screen. Thanks so much for watching.